Good afternoon. Real pleasure to welcome all of you today to the March 14th briefing, which is our second briefing for the meeting next week of March 21st. We're going to go over our agenda, but we do have two discussion items today. One of those is a legislative discussion, and we're pleased to have our part-time lobbyist, Ashley Perkinson, to be here, and she has done a great job for us, and so she'll be up in a moment. We have a discussion item on community grants and special appropriations that we may be able to reach some kind of consensus today, but if not, we can actually place it on the agenda next week. And then we'll go over our agenda items, and we will also deal with, and then we have a couple closed session things. So with that being said, I'll ask Ashley Perkinson if she would come forward and give us a little highlight as we plan our legislative agenda for next year.
Thank you so much, Chair Martin, and good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. In just a few moments, I will play a presentation that the staff put together under the leadership of our county manager and his communications team. And this is a video that we will share with legislators that goes over the investments that the General Assembly has made in Forsyth County and also provides an overview of some of those projects that commissioners feel are important for the future of Forsyth County. But before I share that video, I just want to take a moment and reflect on where we have come since 2021 and to thank the commissioners for their vision in seeing that there were funds available with the General Assembly, really unprecedented funds, both federal and state, and your leadership and vision, and that vision met with opportunity. And I'm just so thrilled to be a part of this team, to be on the ground at the General Assembly, what we lobbyists like to call the building. I'm a regular presence at the building, and thank you for your support and also your relationships with the Forsyth County delegation. We are really blessed in Forsyth County to have a strong Forsyth delegation, of course, with Representative Donnie Lambeth, who serves as one of 3 senior appropriation chairs on the House side, Senator Kravic as a health chair, Senator Lowe, who's been a leader in the Senate for a long time, and of course, in looking at the appropriations, Representative Lambeth was so key in each of those appropriations, and Senator Lowe, of course, with his support of the airport. Representative Zinger has been essential, Representative Baker with her background in leadership in Callidium, and now, of course, we have Representative Kyle Hall, who represents a portion of Forsyth County, and he was instrumental even in the 2021 session before he got that portion of Forsyth County in supporting the Blues Lake funding. And another thing I wanted to point out is that we found a particular success in those initiatives that we really work together from the commissioner's leadership and staff and the government relations efforts in doing our homework, inviting legislators out to important sites, and also introducing bills. As you probably remember, in the 2021 session, we had House Bill 433, that was the Blues Lake funding bill, and we had a regional support, regional representatives, not just from Forsyth County, but also from Guilford County. We had House Bill 571, that was the airport funding bill, and that just this last session, we had House Bill 65, that was the agriculture complex funding bill. And each of those bills, even those standalone bills, don't pass typically on their own. You reach success if you get the funding for those projects in the budget bill. It provides that opportunity for our legislative champions to introduce a bill to say, this is an issue that's important to Forsyth County. I want to put my name on it, and I want to try to fight for that funding in the budget. Now, we are getting ready to shift to the 2024 short session, which will convene April 24th. And I do want to communicate that the feedback I'm getting from legislators in leadership positions is that, remember, in 2023, we did pass a 2-year budget, so funding may be tight. They don't anticipate a lot of new appropriations in the 2024 short session. That said, obviously, we still want to gather those projects and initiatives that are important to the commissioners and be poised if an opportunity does present itself, but also it gives us time to lay the groundwork for continued work in the 2025 long session budget. All also, I think an important aspect in our work with our legislators is to continue to reflect back on initiatives that they have funded. And even though they are, funding appropriations that maybe occurred in 2021 and not the current year, it's still important to reach out to those legislators, to bring them out to those sites, to let them see the return on investment that their work and getting the funding is making to make Forsyth County such an amazing place to live, work, and play. So thank you so much for your support and your relationships with our legislative leaders. One of the things that we did back in the last sessions, we've had, a packet put together by your amazing county managers team and communications team that we've shared with legislators, and we look forward to getting that together again for this short session. But unless there are questions, I'm happy to go ahead and play the video that goes over, again, these investments, but also the appropriation asks that the staff has put together really based on the commissioner's input.
Yeah, and the audience is not just today, but I think our intentions are to get this to legislators and they can share it as well. So hopefully you'll see it's really designed around a thank you and a charge to them as well. So, and thank you, Ashley, for being an amazing presence down there.
Well, thank you, and thank you for Ed and the communications team for putting this together.
In 2023, Forsyth County received support for the Agricultural Event Center, $5 million. The Tanglewood Clubhouse renovation, $4 million. Water sewer enhancements, $20 million. Our state leadership funded critical projects in the past, and on behalf of the residents of Forsyth County, we are all grateful. As we turn to the 2024 short session and upcoming 2025 long session, Forsyth County is once again asking for funding for impactful projects. Here's a look at 6 projects seeking funding. Accelerating the development of the Piedmont Greenway, a planned 19-mile paved greenway connecting the cities of Greensboro and Winston-Salem and the towns of Kernersville, Oak Ridge, and Summerfield. The trail also connects to several popular trail systems, including the Mountains to Sea Trail, Salem Lake Trails, A&Y Greenway, Triad Park, and the Greensboro Watershed Trails, $2 million. The expansion of county parks with a regional draw. Horizons Park Recreation Community Center and Trails, $2.5 million. Union Cross Recreational Lighted Recreation Complex, $3 million. Blues Lake Phase 2, $3 million. Airport projects, $5 million for cost overruns on projects previously funded by the state. Water sewer projects, $35 million to extend service to areas along the I-74 Beltway to serve the anticipated growth. $6 million for the Law Enforcement Detention Center. The facility was constructed almost 30 years ago and needs a replacement HVAC and generators. The new Forsyth County Courthouse needs 12 Crave systems installed. The Crave system required by the State Administrative Office of the Courts, has already installed this system in 5 courtrooms to enhance the operation of the courts. 12 courtrooms do not have this system, which is a state responsibility.
Good. Good work. Good work for our staff. folks.
Well, thank you, and unless there are any questions, that wraps up my presentation.
Good. Questions for Ashley? Thank you for being here. And our second one, we're going to talk a little bit about community grants and special appropriations, I'll let the county manager, I summarize that.
Yeah, Aisha
I
Carter.
see Aisha's going to do
Yeah,
that.
Aisha's going to come up and kind of talk through it, and if we need other staff folks, we can certainly do that. Kind of by way of introduction, we have over time formalized this process for applying for grants. Several years ago, different nonprofits and what have you would just submit letters kind of straight to the board, and there really was not any kind of formal application process. So several years ago, we sort of created that process, and our goals are really to get that information to you, as quickly in this budget process as we can. And Aisha, what we've done is we've really mirrored the work that Aisha did when she was ARPA administrator. Now she's in a role with budget and management, and it was a kind of a natural connection for Aisha to pick this work up as part of the portfolio of work that she does in budget management. So I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Aisha.
Thank you. Good afternoon, County Commissioners. This will be a brief update regarding special appropriations. You should have in front of you a PowerPoint as well as a fiscal year 2024 and 2025 comparison itself. So historically, Forsyth County has provided funding for nonprofit agencies to provide community services to Forsyth County residents. The funding is called special appropriations or sometimes called community grants. It is for a period of 1 year, and those interested were and are encouraged to apply. Here's some notable dates. Fiscal year 2025 application open from noon to noon, January 29th through February 26th. All of the emails, the webpage announcements, and newsletters did include the date and time of the open and close. Next, I have here some historical date timeframes. So early June, there's usually a public hearing on the proposed budget. June 6th through June 27th, the adoption of the budget ordinance, and then all of the terms of service will run through the county's fiscal year, so July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. As of January 2023, Forsyth County community grant applications are accepted electronically via Neighborly Portal. Before, it was a paper application. Neighborly software is a cloud-based technology platform for the administration and disbursement of government funds for programs. And we do have several departments that uses Neighborly as well. So the Community Economic Development Department, they use Neighborly for their housing rehabs. The county, as well as the city of Winston-Salem, uses Neighborly for the American Rescue Plan Act grant. And then Behavioral Health Services uses it for opioid settlement, RFP, and the MOE RFP. There are some great benefits of Neighborly. It automates workflows. So there's an open and close that you can set in there. You can generate reports and analytics. So the Excel that you're looking at, I ran that through Neighborly. It reduces manual tasks, so no more reading paper applications, and then you can tailor it to specific grants. So all the users could possibly tailor the application if they're not already tailored. In regards to a communications plan, in prior years, the county commissioners, the county, got the word out about special appropriations via one of three ways: email to prior applicants that submitted and not submitted, a county news highlight announcing the application, and then word of mouth. Planning for fiscal year 2025, the county did those three things that we did in prior years, but increased those efforts by creating a special appropriations webpage and collaborating with the communications department. So a huge thank you to Ed and the communications staff for helping with a communications plan. So here's the communication plan collab, as well as dates that they were put out. So January 26th, Forsyth County webpage news release was live. January 28th, Ed and his team did a segment on Empowering You, WSNC 90.5 FM radio. January 29th, the portal opening announcement video was created and released on social media webpage. Starting January 30th, there was a video promotion that ran twice per week, each week until the closing of the application. And then we were also put the special appropriations news highlight in the Chronicle and the Winston-Salem Journal, so February 8th and February 11th, as well as did a digital ad. Then lastly here, February 11th, starting February 11th, there was a commercial that aired in the Forsyth County Connection show in the month of February. So here's like some behind the scenes dashboard for the communications department for the web page. So if you can see here, there were 203 unique users that clicked on the special appropriations web page from January 1st through February 7th, and there were 358 views. Due to those communication plan efforts, we did receive 96 applications. There were 50 that submitted at or before the deadline at a total request of $7.3 million. The highest individual request was $500,000 and the lowest request was $15,000. There were 46 applications that did not submit before or at the deadline. Next I have here is a year-to-year comparison of those submitted in fiscal year 2024 compared to what was submitted in fiscal year 2025. So in fiscal year 2024, 35 applications were submitted at a request of $9.7 million. And in fiscal year 2025, 50 applications were submitted at a request of $7.3. So 15 more applications submitted this year. And surprisingly, there was a lower request, so 2.3 decrease, 2.3 million decrease. This slide shows organizations awarded in fiscal year 2024 compared to those that applied for fiscal year 2025. So in 2024, we had 22 applications that were awarded funding. Of the 22 that were awarded, 18 submitted applications in fiscal year 2025. That's a difference of 4. And the actual amount request did increase by $291,000. I just mentioned those notable dates again as a FYI. Any questions, comments?
I probably got one to start with. As you know, we've had a few emails and people lamenting the fact that their application, as in whatever the number was, 40-something, were not, they did not meet the deadline, and they were concerned about that. And my memory is getting worse as I get older, but last year, basically, did we have a firm deadline that we did not look at anything after this time? Did we use that same process of a firm stop-start issue?
From my recollection, yes. The time for submission was similar last year, about January 29th to February 26th. That was the application open and close. So from my recollection, yes.
Yeah, I think our staff policy has been to to close applications, but that if somebody requests something and submits something afterwards, we say, ARC board members, we received this, but it was received after the deadline, so it was more of a notification process on our side. I'm not gonna, if somebody asks me about this, I will say, we had a process. If you want to submit it after the process, you're free to submit. I mean, I'm not going to keep people from giving all the information that they want. So that's sort of the thing that we do at the staff level. But we can certainly open it back up if you want to, and then, with the intentions of having a hard deadline and us closing down Neighborly. I think one of the realities now that we're in a fully automated system is when we shut down the portal, nobody can get back into it. The only way they could get anything to you is just through an email or a letter for consideration. And so there's a couple of different ways we can handle that. But ultimately, if a board wants to get a request for funding to you after it, it just won't be through here. It'll be through separate information to you, and it's up to you whether or not you want to accept it or not. So.
Yeah, and I'll just make one comment. I do know that one of the emails that I received actually had a pasted copy of what appeared to be our advertisement that did not mention noon, it mentioned the day. And they felt like because they couldn't submit it afternoon, I mean, they weren't able to get in, so they didn't submit it, but they felt like they were okay because it was on the day. That was their point, and I don't know where what they cut and pasted came from, but I don't think they just created it and put it on there. So I think they found some date, some information somewhere, and for all I know, it was last year. Maybe it was last year. I don't know where it came from.
Yeah, the news highlights did state the date and time. The application as well states the date and time. Before you start the application,
Well, yeah, I've seen all
but
of
the
those.
application actually states it in red before you started, the date and time. And then when you're actually in the application, it states it as well on the side. So this is inside the application, and it'll tell you the date and time there. And then I should create a test application. But if I was starting a new application, just like how Behavioral Health has a date and time, my special appropriation application is the same thing.
Yeah. My answer to this particular one was I got some information, clarified it, and said I thought that was the only one. Mm-hmm. And I guess I personally was a little surprised that there were 40 plus that indicated that they didn't get to submit theirs. So I think my question is there any? I mean, we could literally vote on this next week, or if there's any kind of consensus about, should we extend the deadline, accept those applications of people that wanted to, and again, if there's somebody else that wanted to submit out of fairness, they would have X amount of time to do that. Obviously, the second group, the people that did not submit by that deadline, had much smaller proposals. Average amount requested was way less, considered just looking at the numbers. But I mean, I'm not indifferent about it, but it's whatever. It's kind of what the pleasure of the board is to do that. If we can reach a consensus, that's great. If people say we need to vote on this next week, that's okay too.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's very clear that it was 12 o'clock. I don't see what else the staff could have done. And these other folks didn't have any problem knowing when the deadline was. So it has to stop somewhere. There's no sense in setting a time if we're not going to abide by it.
Yeah. Ask a specific question. We had the one person who asserts that they didn't know that it was 12 noon. Is that the only one of the 46 that says that in which the applicant said, I tried to submit it later on that day?
I only received 4 calls about trying to submit it after the deadline. Of the 46, one thing about Neighborly, it kind of shows you there's different tabs. The application has different sections in it, and it'll tell you how much of an application was complete. So I can kind of print a report that shows that as well. I think only the one person I think you're referring to, they didn't even start an application. They're not one of the 46.
Okay, so there were, you think that there were 4 applications that they started to complete and, noon hit and they never finished?
Yes. Only 4 reached out to me.
So where did the 46 come from? I mean,
46 are
that's 42 more, so somehow or another they got somewhere, where did they come from?
The 46 applications are applications that started, there are applicants who started applications, but they didn't finish it. They just didn't finish it. And of the 46, only two of them actually started an application.
There were 44 who didn't even start the application before the deadline. Is that all?
Correct.
So help me understand again how we knew these 44, since they had to start it, didn't they have to start it for you to count them? Otherwise, how do you know
No, they
to count them?
started the application. They didn't finish the
So
application.
they did start it.
They
So
did
had
start it. So if
started
you look
the
at the ones
application.
on the screen right now, 50 completed the application by the deadline, and 46 did not. They did not submit the application.
Mr. Chairman, I think a better way to maybe describe it is that we get a lot of applications of people who, as soon as you open, may go into the portal thinking that they're going to actually complete it from start to finish. Some may be a duplicate of something that was already submitted. They may have changed their mind. It could be in progress of 5%. There's some that may be in progress of 40% and just decided to quit. So we almost would need to provide you with a breakdown so you can see kind of the percentages of in progress. I would contend, without even seeing this, that the majority of those 46 probably were not people who truly intended to fully complete the application process. That is pretty typical. That's not abnormal. We could go in and look to see like kind of the percentages and how the ones that really look like they were really close to completion. I don't know if that helps with clarification.
My only, we're belaboring this issue.
I do have one.
And I'll make this one, well, you go ahead. Go ahead. I just have one other thing.
Thank you, Chair Martin. I do want to directly address the gentleman from last Thursday who talked about Derek Young, who from the Love Festival, and he did request publicly an extension of time, and I did receive his email as a representative of all citizens of Forsyth County. Sure, send it to me. But what I will say is that staff had set up a time frame, and it will be hard for me to, argue on your behalf once the deadline has expired. And so I would do my best for citizens who decide, well, hey, I voted her in, I'm going to email it. Sure, I would bring it up to the other commissioners and ask for consideration, but I think just being realistic, you're not probably going to be a priority for the good of being fair, because everybody, I'm sure, who didn't submit, would have an equally compelling excuse of why. And I just want to make sure that I am fully, recognizing all citizens, but also making sure that we all adhere to the standard that publicly was sent out and that we should all be mindful of. But again, email it to me or any of the commissioners, and, at that point, we can bring it to the attention of the other commissioners. I'm speaking for myself right now. I think Chair Martin has another scenario for consideration as it relates to a consensus, which, just to answer that, I would definitely consider if we wanted to open it up for, another week. But if the consensus in there, we'll move forward. But the other piece of constructive criticism that I would give to the good of staff is some of the citizens who I do see on the list that applied had concerns around when they called the county for technical assistance. There seemed to be, well, my department doesn't handle that. I have to give you to another department. And what I will say is that, I'm sure there is explanation of maybe what happened as it relates to that kind of communication. But I would just ask on behalf of citizens that when they call for technical assistance, if we can make sure that we're very proactive of giving them as much information that we have and then sending them on to another department that may have better information. But it seemed like to a couple of the citizens that I spoke to that they were kind of being given the runaround versus direct, definitive support.
My comment would be, it's instructive that if you started the application, it told you a specific time. And I'm less sympathetic to an applicant who did not start the application before the day of the deadline, which appears to have been the case with Mr. Young. If he had not begun an application until that day, if there's no record that one
There was not.
had started, I would say that to a lot of people the use of 12 p.m. is confusing because it's not a typical hour deadline for grant. I'm told by people who do a lot more grant work than I've ever done. It's atypical for there to be a noon deadline for applications on a particular date. And it's not an uncommon confusion for people to say 12 p.m. They think it means 12 midnight when that's 12 a.m. the next day. Going forward, I would recommend that all our materials, if we're going to use, and I'm not sure that noon is a good time to use, and so we might just drop that going forward. But if we do stick with noon, that we say noon to avoid any possibility of confusion, and just say explicitly, that applications not received by whatever hour it is, by noon or 5 p.m. or midnight on that day, will not be considered. Applications that are not completed by that will not be considered. And that's really bending over backwards to the small and unsophisticated applicant, because any organization that has that does this as a standard thing knows that you don't want to be hanging out on the last day.
Yeah, so in prior year, it was 12 noon as well, and I do see that several of the other applications in Neighborly was 12 noon. I did see one person do like 11:59 a.m. Versus 12 noon, because it helps kind of, differentiate between p.m. and a.m. of nighttime. Before, I believe maybe 2 or 3 years earlier, I think it was 5 p.m., but because it was 5 p.m., the person in that position couldn't provide technical assistance after they're leaving at 5. So I think that's why I was moved up to 12.
The last thing I would say, I have staff that's pulling some stats behind the scenes just to give a little perspective. 31 of those applications completed 0 or 1 of 8 steps. So there was 8 steps, so 31 of them was either 0 or 1. Only 4 completed 5 or more steps, and they're in the process of counting for me, like the in-between. But just to give a little perspective, there were only 4 that looks like they were really working their way towards maybe the finish line.
But fundamentally, I agree with the idea. You set a deadline, and you say if you miss this deadline, you're next year. Because this is, I've always found special appropriations of this nature to be an unwieldy process and to absorb more of the budgeting time than it really ought to get. So any legitimate way to streamline that process, I think, is a good thing for the public interest broadly. But I think we ought to spend, I think we ought to spend the overwhelming majority of our time as commissioners dealing with our essential, our core responsibility in the budget, as opposed to spending 90% of our budgeting debate time over 2% of most of the county's budget.
My read of the discussion is that we're done.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're ready to go. Thank you.
All right, very good. All right, so we're going to have kind of our full review of the items for the March 21st agenda. I'll go ahead and get Chris Murphy to come up. He was going to kind of get on through these. They were reviewed by Kirk last week in totality. So while you're loading that up, Chris, I'll introduce the first one. It's a public hearing on the zoning petition of Jerry Stoltz and Patty Stoltz from AG to GBL. It is zoning docket F-1637, and it's property located at the northwest and southwest intersections of Shore Road and Griffin Road. And I believe we've got to get our computer back in the sync here.
So I'm having to find the meeting. Now stop share, now share my screen.
There we go.
All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. As the county manager did mention, Kirk did brief all three of these items last week, so I will try to be brief. I understand you have some other issues to get to, but this is a request of Jerry and Patty Stoltz to rezone property from AG to GBL on the northwest and southwest corners of Shore Road and Griffin Road. This is the countywide growth management area plan map with the site indicated F-1637 located within GMA 3 near the intersection of Shore and Highway 52 and Westinghouse. These are the subject properties shown in yellow, both again on the north and south side of Griffin Road on the west side of Shore, close to the intersection. You see the HBS piece of property located in this area here. That is the Love's Truck Stop that was rezoned by the commissioners probably 18 months to 2 years ago. This is the subject property highlighted in yellow on the countywide aerial imagery. You can see that that these pieces of properties are currently undeveloped and either wooded or in pasture slash hay fields. This is the subject properties shown on the Tobaccoville area plan update approved in the mid-2010s, and it shows the subject properties indicated for a mixed-use development. This is looking north along Shore. At the northern subject property is to the left. This is looking north from Griffin to the subject property. This is looking, the left image is looking west. The right image is looking east along Griffin Road. You can see the construction of the truck stop in the background across Shore in that image to the right. This is looking west and again east along Griffin Road. This is looking southwest from the intersection of Shore and Griffin to the subject property on the south side of Griffin. This is looking south along Shore Road. You can see the construction of the Love's Truck Stop to the left, subject property to the right. And then again, this is looking east and west along Griffin Road again, looking south from Griffin Road into the subject property. These are just a list of the requested uses. Again, a mixture of residential, retail, business, recreation, and institutional and public uses. As far as the analysis, Legacy 2030 and the area plan do recommend commercial and office development for the properties in this location. The plan recommend a variety of residential types for the parcels west of Shore Road and south of Griffin, including the southern subject property. However, for the subject properties, the area plan does recommend an interconnected, comprehensively designed development that is complementary to the area uses with a density of less than 8 units per acre. And what is before you is a limited use request without a site plan. The requested uses are generally consistent with the mixed-use recommendation of the Tobacconville Area Plan and Legacy 2030. However, without a site-specific development plan, this specific request is inconsistent because it doesn't have a comprehensive design recommendations. We can't determine whether or not it's comprehensively designed and therefore meeting the recommendations of the plan, and therefore believe this request is incompatible with the existing single-family neighborhood to the west and the character of the area, as it would allow high-intensity commercial encroachment into a rural residential area without a specified plan. This was heard by the planning board at their February meeting. There were numerous speakers in opposition who did voice their concerns with incompatibility of some of the uses, concerns about property values, the speculative and blank slate approach of the L request instead of a site plan, noise, traffic, and they did have some concerns specifically about multifamily. Following the public hearing and discussion, the planning board did vote to recommend denial by a 6-3 vote. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Chris?
Just one, if I may. I seem to recall in past years I've seen staff reports to the elected body that were updated with the information regarding the hearing before the planning board. I don't see any information in this packet. Is that an update that's coming, or did I just miss it?
You missed it. We have it.
It's in there.
It's in there?
We generally don't update the staff report itself. We supplement the staff report with the recommendations and the hearing information from the public hearing held before the planning board. So it should be at the end of the staff report that should have the discussion and like the minutes and the vote that's included with that.
I can't find it in my copy.
Yeah, if you click on the part and start. Yeah,
I'll confirm that when I sit down, but I mean, if not, we will certainly get you that. I can get you a copy of it regardless, but it should be in the packet. But.
Yeah, right here.
It's on page 14.
I do have a question about why a site plan was not submitted.
That was their choice. Our recommendation to the developer was to submit it as a site plan. I think that, again, I think this is speculative in nature and they don't really have an end user in mind, so they don't want to tie themselves down to a site plan. I think you could actually probably ask the property owner and or their site plan preparer when we actually have the hearing next week. Our recommendation was for them to have a plan, and that would do two things. It would allow us to see what the design and the layout would look like, and it would also help ensure that the uses that are closest to those residential properties to the west are appropriate. And because we didn't have a site plan, we don't know what the layout's going to be, and we don't know what uses are going to be located closest to those residential homes. And for that reason, that's why staff had recommended denial, and that's the same reason why the planning board also recommended denial, because they didn't have a plan that provided any kind of assurances to the neighbors as far as what would be located closest to them.
What uses are the neighbors most opposed to?
The uses that were cited at the public hearing, they were concerned about the multifamily and the townhome uses. They were concerned about hotel and motel. They were concerned about the use of services B, microbreweries, and drive-through restaurants.
Thank you.
Other questions for Chris?
I do have a follow-up question. I was able to benefit from a conversation with the folk that's submitting for this approval, and there seemed to be, and let me disclaim this, that some of this is definitely above my pay grade, but just listening from a comprehensive perspective, there seemed to be a rationale behind not submitting a site plan that did not seem nefarious. It seemed like it was something that they had thought through and felt like it was for the benefit of what they were trying to promote in the area. So what I'll do is just try to get something sent to me in email so that by the time we vote for it, I'll be able to convey accurately why there was no submission of the site plan.
That's fine. And, one of the things, obviously, we can provide a recommendation to someone. Ultimately, it's our job to accept what comes into us and bring it forward to the planning board and the elected body the way they want to submit it. Our advice was to do a plan. They had the reason why they didn't want to do a plan. And the reason why we would prefer that they do a plan is probably the exact same, is the opposite reason why they don't want to do a plan. We would like to see how things could be tied down, because that's what a plan does, it ties things down, whereas I think they want the flexibility because they don't exactly know who their end users are going to be, so they want a lot more flexibility on how the site could eventually be laid out. But I certainly hear what you're saying.
Thank you.
Question, Chris. Whether it be now or sometime in the future, if more zoning occurs in the specific areas with the truck stop that's coming on, does a planning not see any need for road improvements if all of those things were in place? The things that's taking place there, most of that traffic is going to come on out at 52. On the other end of it, from the creek on, where all that housing development area is up there, I'd say most of it goes to 65.
Mm-hmm.
So
the next case that we're going to consider, F-1638, has a traffic impact analysis as part of the submission. I will say that just looking, obviously, whenever folks apply for the actual permits, NCDOT may impose requirements and conditions that are outside of the scope of what planning in and of itself can. But if you look at the staff report for both this case and for F-1638, the existing traffic along Shore Road in this area and Griffin Road are both less than 1,000 trips per day, and the road currently, as configured today, are designed to handle in excess of 16,000 trips a day. So it would take a lot of development that would drive it over its capacity. Now, with that being said, obviously, as development is completed, you want to make sure that there are improvements and things that are gotten to help alleviate future issues, and that's what NCDOT would do through their driveway permit process.
Yeah, I share Commissioner Linville's comments, particularly about the bridge. I drive that regularly, and that bridge is old, and I've communicated with Pat Ivey. He was very good about it. He made it clear, but there are no plans at the moment to deal with the bridge.
Ready for the second item?
Yes.
No more questions? Okay. The second item, while he's pulling that up, is a public hearing on the zoning petition of Jerry Stoltz and ITAC 484 LLC from RS9 to LIS. It's property located on the east side of Shore Road, south of US 52, zoning docket F-1638.
Thank you. And this is right across the road from where we were just talking about. A little, obviously, larger tract, 126 plus acres. There that kind of wraps around the Love's Truck Stop that we looked at some of those images earlier. Click on the PowerPoint again. Site shown on the Legacy Growth Management Area Plan, again, also in GMA 3. This is the subject property, again, highlighted in yellow. You see how it does wrap around the Love's Truck Stop site. It is across the street from Griffin Road and the cases that we just heard. This is the aerial imagery. Forsyth County, you see, the somewhat undeveloped and agricultural and wooded nature of the subject property. There are a couple of homes on the subject property that would be removed as part of this request. This is the subject property shown on the Tobaccoville area plan update done in the mid-2010s. It does recommend industrial for the subject properties. This is looking west from Shore Road down Cap Farm Road. This is the location approximately of where the new road to serve the 7 industrial lots would be located. This is looking northeast from Shore Road. You can see the Love's Truck Stop being constructed there on the left-hand side of that image, so that's looking towards the bridge and US 52 there at Shore. This is looking north and south along Shore Road. Again, looking north on the left-hand image, you see the construction of Love's, and also looking south, you see the zoning sign in both of those images. Looking north and south along Shore Road, further to the south along Shore. And this is looking east from Shore Road into the subject property. This is the site plan. It is a two-phase request. It does show the construction of a public street along with 7 lots. You do see the stream and floodplain network that the proposed public street would cross. In analyzing this request, Legacy 2030 does recognize the scarcity of good industrial land and seeks to promote wise economic use of those limited resources. The plan recommends following the recommendations of area plans, and the proposed development does recognize the adjacent residential zoning and visual impact of the site from US 52 and does include enhanced buffering to address those issues, as well as meeting the underlying requirements of the UDO in some instances, such as the thoroughfare overlay buffer. The request is consistent with the comprehensive design goals and industrial use recommendations of both the Tobacconville Area Plan Update and Legacy 2030. There is easy access to US 52, the Northern Beltway, and there are utilities that make this site well suited for industrial development. This was heard by the Planning Board also at their February 8th public hearing, where there were 4 speakers in opposition. Their concerns did center on traffic, environmental issues, some historic issues with those 2 homes that I mentioned, some of the uses, and again, property values. Following the public hearing and discussion, the Planning Board did vote unanimously to recommend approval of this request to the commissioners. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Chris?
Is there sewer? I think it is, but I'm not certain. Is there sewer right in this immediate area?
I don't specifically know the answer to that question, but I can have it for you next time. I can't imagine that there would not be, given the size of these buildings. But there should be sewer. I know there is sewer on the other side, and I believe there is sewer to the southeast, but I'll either have you an answer before I walk out of here, because I'll look specifically at the plan and see exactly what it shows, or I'll have it prepared for next time.
Well, the development up on the east or 65 side, the reason I think it's sewer there, those dwellings is on less than a half-acre lots, I think.
Right, and again, with the Loves and with the commercial development across Shore, I can't believe that that you would try to do that without sewer. But again, I'll get you an answer either today or tomorrow to specifically where it is. But again, one of our analysis said that utilities are available. So again, I'm making the assumption that it's there, but I did not look specifically at the plan to see where the sewer outfall is.
Well, is there an outfall line on that? I don't know the name of it. That creek that goes under Shore Road. I think it originates north of 52, but nevertheless, it's down in behind, well, it sort of splits this piece of property. If there's not if there's outfall line there, then from there they can go a distance to wherever, and even if they got an old across, they use a pump station. So, and find out whether that that outfall line that I believe is there, if it connects into the one that was put in ever how many years ago when the Reynolds tobacco plant was put in.
Okay.
I think that, I don't know that. I just think it probably is. But all that, I think is important to the zoning matters.
Any other questions? All righty.
The item 3 is a public hearing on ordinance amendment proposed by Planning and Development Services staff to amend Chapter 4 and 5 of the Unified Development Ordinance. Turn it over to Chris.
Again, this is a request of staff to, for a text amendment to do 3 different things: to increase the number of attached units allowed per building in the RM5 district, increase the maximum building height allowed in the RM8, RM12, and RM18 multifamily districts, and revise the threshold for which buffer yard standards are required. The amendment is intended to reduce rezoning requests to higher density multifamily districts by allowing more design flexibility in lower density multifamily districts. I know we have had a couple of instances over the last several years where we have had to have folks ask for a zoning district to a higher category because there was a design consideration that they could not meet. They either had to have more than 4 units attached, they had to have additional height that pushed them to a higher district. So that's what this request is intended to address. The purpose is to enable multifamily developments to meet the maximum zoning density while accommodating site constraints such as creeks, floodplains, steeper slopes, etc. Again, the amendment does increase the maximum number of attached units from 4 to 6 in the RM5 district. It also increases the height by approximately a story from 40 to 48 feet in the RM8 district, from 45 to 60 feet in the RM12 district, and from 60 to 72 feet in the RM18 district, with some trade-offs for setbacks for the location of the building whenever you go over those heights. That's what I just mentioned there. If you go over 40 feet in height, you've got to have the building has to be set back a minimum of 50 feet from the adjacent properties, and that's to kind of take away that canyon or shadow effect onto those surrounding single-family residential developments. But parking can be located in that area, except for where the buffer yard is required, and that's not a change from what's allowed currently. The final thing that this does is it basically goes from requiring a buffer yard when you go over 5 units to requiring a buffer yard when you go greater than 1 acre in size when you're doing a multifamily development. We feel like this amendment will right-size the dimensional standards for multifamily districts by accommodating those site constraints and hopefully reduce rezoning requests to an over-ask, kind of right-size what the request is for. And we feel like this will allow greater ability to utilize existing multifamily sites. This was heard by the Planning Board at their December 14th meeting, where there were no speakers in opposition, and the Planning Board did vote unanimously to recommend approval. Further, this has been to City Council and was adopted as presented back in February. It's my understanding from whenever Kirk was here last week that there were some questions surrounding cottage courts. Cottage court is a type of a design concept that's in the ordinance, and there is a provision in the ordinance that basically says that the most stringent requirements in the ordinance apply. And there are some specific conditions of approval related to cottage courts that have a maximum height of 30 feet for any cottage court use. And similarly, there is a requirement that if you have parking located to the side or the rear, you have to have a buffer yard between that parking and any adjacent single-family zoning. So I'm not sure if that answered all the questions from last time, but that is my understanding of what the 2 main concerns were related to cottage courts.
If I may, it sort of stabs in that direction, but I'm not sure. It's not there in terms of my comprehension of the impact. So if you have an acre lot that's currently zoned RS, and a developer is seeking to take advantage of the cottage court alternative to one purpose of doing that would be that you all but eliminate setbacks.
All but eliminate what?
All but eliminate setbacks from property lines. They're not completely eliminated, but they're substantially shrunk down.
For a cottage court.
Setback, as I recall, the language says that setbacks don't apply except for, and it cites a very minimum. Like
Under the proposed UDO CC 25 or under the cottage courts?
Existing cottage court
Okay.
rules.
All right.
It shrinks it down to like 15 feet max setback requirement from what in a standard RS development would be for the rear of the home would be like a 35-foot.
The rear setback for RS9 is 20 feet. And a side setback is a minimum of 7 with a combined of 15. So the RS9 already allows you to be as close as 20 in the rear and 7 with a combined, so 7 and 8, you can't go lower than 7, and a combined of 7 and 8 for a combined side yard setback of 15 feet in existing RS9 zoning.
Okay. So this change would not permit multifamily designed units, that is attached structure, in an RS zoned cottage court.
Correct, that it would not. Now, the cottage court provisions in and of itself allow for a twin home, so you could have 2 units attached, but would not allow for a multifamily 4-story walk-up, would not allow for a townhouse, et cetera. It would solely allow for single-family and twin home, no taller than 30 feet.
Okay.
Again, this ordinance has nothing to do with cottage courts in and of itself, but the adoption of this ordinance doesn't amend what the cottage court standards already allow.
Right. That is that precise clarification is what I was specifically asking for. Also asking whether they're now, does the buffer yard elimination for residential zones of an acre or less does this affect setback requirements other than the specifically named buffer yard requirement?
No. It does
Absolutely
not.
certain of that interpretation. Just checking. Okay.
I mean, again, for multifamily, that is correct. Again, the cottage courts have their own standards.
They have separate
And a
standards.
cottage court is an RS9, but this in and of itself doesn't do anything to the setbacks. If anything, if you go with an increased height, it increases the setback.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Any other questions for Chris on the ordinance change?
All right, thank you.
Got it.
All right, very good. So agenda item 4 are minutes, and those are,
Those have been sent out.
all right, so you'll have those for your review. All right, we have, it looks like 5 budget and finance items. Kyle Wolf is going to brief the first 3 of those, so I'll ask him to come on up. And item 5 is an amendment to the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget ordinance, appropriates $15,500 from Carolina Cross 100 for our state, our well-being program.
That's right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. So the county has received funding through University of North Carolina to participate in the Our State, Our Wellbeing program that's focused on improving mental health and reducing suicide across North Carolina. The funds are going to be used for in-person forums and also to offset some existing personal services costs. So no new positions. It's $15,500 to be appropriated.
Questions for Kyle?
All right, item 6.
So item 6, make sure I got this one. Yep. So back in December, you may recall that there was a contract that was approved by the board for, with Custom Truck and Body Works for construction of a 12-foot walk-around light rescue body and mounting to a chassis that the county already owns. It would be used for our Unit 309 for fire suppression work. And so the funds for that are in our the countywide overlay fire tax district fund balance. So funds that have been generated over the past couple of years from the overlay district that are in fund balance. And so this is really appropriating those funds to pay for this vehicle. So it's a total of $174,200.
Any questions for Kyle?
All right. Item 7, I think Kimberly Bussey from Budget's also going to come up. This one was actually part of a discussion that we had kind of pushed off from the winter work session. We've had a number of discussions about our diesel ambulance fleet and the fact that we moved away from diesels into a gas ambulance because of issues around the length of life of the diesel and the operational issues that really the whole industry has seen. And so I asked staff to go back and take a look at all the assumptions in our original plan for vehicle replacement. And so they did that. They came back and with a recommendation. What I wanted them to do is to take our 28 frontline ambulance fleet, plow in these new assumptions around the length of time that they can be in service. And just as a reminder, the frontline units, what was happening is we were getting to end of life before the replacement period. And so we had started having ambulances stack up and not be functional. The goal really is to replace that frontline ambulance with a new ambulance while there is still some life in it, so that you can keep some backup units. But the financial plan only replaces the frontline ones, and then we have some life left in those backup units so that we got spares when vehicles go out and this, that, and the other thing. And so they did a great job with that. The upshot of this really was to get ourselves back on track is to go ahead and ask the board to appropriate some fund balance, which is also essentially PAYGO. Because when you appropriate this fund balance, you're essentially appropriating PAYGO that I feel comfortable that we can do this. It is $1.5 million. Our annual spend on ambulances is about $1.5 million, and Kimberly's going to show you that. But it is, Kyle, we're essentially moving money from fund balance. Why don't you mention that, and then if Kimberly can come up and just show you a quick glimpse of the plan, you actually have it in front of you. It is somewhat a work in progress, but it's essentially a leasing program from ourselves so that we don't have to, borrow money to do this, and that's been our goal all the way along. So,
sure. And so, like the county manager said, this is essentially appropriating $1.5 million from fund balance into our subfund 107, which is where we buy vehicles out of, and it is basically to kind of front load some dollars for the purchase of 4 new ambulances based on the current state of the fleet that it is just needing some replacement, more replacements than remounts. And so I'll let Kimberly kind of go through the rest of it.
Yeah, you're going to have to move your head sideways or something. Yeah, there. Yeah. Up. Yeah, I have to go the other way. There we go. All right. Can you help?
Thank you. Sit in there, Kyle. Good afternoon, Commissioners. So you do have this in front of you. I know the text is a little small, so we're just going to kind of zoom into the bottom line there for today, and then I'll talk about a summary of what this means a little bit, and then we can try to answer any questions you may have. As County Manager said, this is a draft of the 10-year EMS replacement plan. It does include 29 ambulances because we did add one in the fiscal year 24 adopted budget. And as the county manager mentioned as well, thank you, Kyle, that many of the vehicles have exceeded their recommended age for use and have high mileage. And several of the box warranties for the ambulances have expired. That's a 20-year expiration warranty there. And these factors have contributed to more vehicles being out of service for EMS. So this plan, this is a draft plan again, and it does reuse a replacement and a remount schedule. And this would replace a total of about 18 ambulances over the next 5 years, and then would focus on remounts for the following 5 at least. This draft plan does assume prices according to the North Carolina Sheriff's Office Association, excuse me, the North Carolina Sheriff's Association. And those costs, to give you an idea of the difference in a replacement and a remount, a new vehicle is about $280,000 in 2024, and a remount is about $150,000. So that's why both are used. Also, to improve the quality and performance of the EMS fleet, this plan does strive to shorten the replacement and remount schedule, and that's for a remount vehicles every 4 years and to replace them within that 20-year lifespan of the box. Again, the number that's included in this 10-year draft plan that you do have in front of you does not change. It will be 29 at this point. The average annual cost for the plan is $1.3 million. So that's the total cost you see down there in the bottom, and hopefully on your screen. Yeah, that $1,300,211. That includes only ambulances that we currently have as is. The request, again, there are some planned meetings with emergency services and with general services in the coming weeks, but there's also a request to include quick response vehicles or QRVs into this plan. And so the bottom number there does include 2 of those, replacements for 2 of those a year. And so that total amount to include 2 of those, and by the way, that is half of the request from EMS at this point, but to include 2 of those, the total amount is $1.46 annually. So that is an average cost for this plan. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have in the context of this draft.
I think the only thing I would add is that this assumes that staff doesn't increase. As we bring staffing increases and expand the system, which will happen as the community grows, we would add to the frontline requirements, and that would change the plan. But fundamentally, what's driving this is we found ourselves with the assumptions that we had historically used for replacement just were not realistic, and that's a function of what happened in the marketplace, frankly.
Well, and that's what I'd like to know. I'd like to know the difference in the expected life in your new model compared to the old. I mean, what have we been operating on? A 6-year, 7-year, what number of years of, and now we're reducing that down to 4 or whatever? I mean, I'm trying to.
Yeah, so we had another analyst in charge of the plan previously, so I can't answer that right now, but I can get you that information.
Say that again now?
We had someone else who was in charge of the plan for the last few years, so I'm sorry I don't have that answer right off the top of my head, but I can get it to you. But I know that as far as what the plan has included in previous years, the amount of money has been significantly less from what the motor vehicle fund has actually received since fiscal year 20. I think the amount has been an average of about $1,047,000. So this plan is about a $300,000 increase from where we have been actual dollars for the past 4 years or so.
So the there were 2 assumptions that were sort of implicit in that. My recollection, because I think I did the original plan, was about 5 years. It's about 5.5 years between vehicles getting replaced. But the other assumption was how long backups would last in the system. And what when we sat down with this plan and we looked at it and said, okay, we got 3.5, 4-year-old ambulances that were literally down and not repairable, that the condition of them was so bad, and you get them to 6 years and you can do replace brakes, you can replace transmissions, you can do a lot of that stuff, but literally they just, we were keeping those old diesel ambulances in a backup mode for a long time, and that's where that's where we've gotten ourselves.
So is this gonna, I don't see where the remounts made sense with the diesel chassis, because they lasted for 300,000 miles. And it made sense to buy the remounts. In fact, I want to make sure I'm understanding this. If you'll look on your chart, I'm looking down to I want to make sure I'm reading this right. It's the it's a 2018 Chevrolet G4500. It's E26 on your chart on the left, and it shows over there the box age at 21. So that means that 2000, I'm asking, does it mean that the 2018 ambulance has a remount of 21 years old?
That's what that says, yes.
All right. So, okay.
Yeah,
So,
and so the
so
town-
we would expect in this new model that a box is still going to last about, it's just going to.
20 years.
You're going, well, I'm trying to, you'll still be doing switching, because
Oh, yeah.
the chassis is not going to, the chassis doesn't last, is not lasting. I mean, this is, the gasoline engine chassis, is the engine, I understand that, is the chassis view to include the engine?
Yes.
So if it does, and these engines are wearing out, it looks like the chassis are not going to last long. It almost becomes, well, what does a remount do?
It puts a box on a new chassis.
So we buy new chassis instead of having a chassis that lasts a long time. It's still,
The box can be remounted 3 or 4 times. So you can remount the box, and it's cheaper to do a remount than it is to buy a brand new ambulance.
absolutely.
So you want to maximize the number of times. The other issue that we found ourselves in now is just the supply chain side of how long ambulances are out waiting for remounts. That used to be a 3-month process. Now that's a year process in some cases, which we are going back to the marketplace and trying to challenge the marketplace on that as well. Maybe we ship them, in when we buy the remount, we'll buy it, but we got to have the remount done in 4 months. And, you can't keep our vehicle forever.
So if your initial period of time of anticipated life expectancy of that, it was 5 years, how much are you reducing that?
It's 5 years, a year, but it was a 5-year with the vehicle lasting longer. We were taking them out of service at 5 years, and they would operate in a backup mode for particular. If it's a unit that's in pretty good shape, that's kind of clipping along, then it can stay. I'm not gonna. If it's running, I may delay my new ambulance.
Prematurely if it's in good shape, but
Yeah.
but you've created a new model, and I'm just trying to get at. I'm trying to get in my head how much of that is accelerated if you're taking them out of service in 5. Are you now thinking that you're going to take them out of service in 3 and a half?
And what
4?
we're saying to you with this one-time purchase to get back on track is we've got to buy a lump of them.
But the getting back on track is a new track.
It's a new track.
And the new track has a shorter life expectancy.
Yes.
And that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
Is what are we really talking about here in the new model, this new track, if
A
you
year or
will?
2.
Well, the big problem, as I see it, is this, and we've touched on it a little bit before, so I'll touch on it again. We've got experience with some of these gas engines, about 300,000, I think, according to the manager, the engine. The rest of the chassis is probably doing okay, lasts as long as the diesel. They've got this problem and have had it for a while. All of the big 18-wheelers got this problem too of emissions. And they worked, and the engineers worked on them, getting it up to where it would meet the EPA specifications. Well, they got it up there, but in the meantime, it was not totally reliable. They kept having problems with it. Now, the 18-wheelers, you're not going to see them going back to gas. These are a mid-size diesel, and that's sort of what we're faced with, and other people too. But what I think we need to do is, for the time being, is I guess that we're going to need to buy some of the gas vehicles, which in my opinion is going backwards. It's not really my opinion. It's going backwards. But the only hope we got is those smart engineers, and they are, is to fix this problem, and they'll fix it. Some of these Ford diesel engines, the diesel engine wasn't fully developed by Ford to begin with. They were something else, but I'm not saying the Ford's any worse than anything else. But that's the problem. But whenever they get to where they have got these engines that will last longer, we need to go back to that. We don't need to stick with these gas engines.
I agree completely with that.
I think absolutely, because the hours, these ambulances just run all the time. And so that in a diesel environment, that's built for a diesel environment. So, but this will get us back on track. Obviously, we're going to kind of keep our eye on what the marketplace does, and if there's a better, more logical, if we can go back to diesel, we will.
Well, staff's investigation on those diesel engines for this size truck, does all of the manufacturers have the same problem? I think they probably do, but
Steve,
somebody's going to fix it sooner or later, and I hope it's sooner.
Yeah, Stephen can come up and speak to that for sure. So.
Thank you. What was the question again about when you could go back to diesel? At this point right now, for the Type 3 ambulance, there's no plans in the future to go back with a diesel. So if we want to go back to a diesel, we'll have to go to a Type 1, which is basically a pickup chassis. But it's also more of expense. It's about, I think, $70,000, $80,000 more a truck. But that may last a little bit longer being a diesel.
Stephen, I think his question was, is across all the manufacturers, were all the diesel manufacturers having the same kind of problems with the DEF situation?
It's Ford, Dodge, Chevrolet, all the manufacturers are having issues with DEF and their emission systems. EGR coolers are going out, and we've just had a horrible time. Even with the diesels we got now, still having issues with DEF fluids. Check engine lights coming on, losing power, that kind of thing, right now the gas engine's a lot better because it's not breaking down or causing all these EPA violations and smog parts on the engine. They do have some smog parts on there like EGR cooler or EGRs, but they don't give us near the problem right now as the ambulances, the diesels. Like I say, the Dodge, Ford, Chevrolet, International, Freightliner and all that do make ambulance chassis are having the same issue with a lot of issues with the diesel.
Well, our only hope is, hope they fix it. I'm confident they'll fix it. And when we have the next meeting on it in a minute, that I think that problem's going to be fixed, and that's when we need to go back to the diesels.
Agreed.
And somebody can go back and check and see whenever that is.
Yeah, I try to make sure I'm on top of the situations as far as any kind of new engineering issues and stuff across the board. I'm like you, I think they'll eventually fix it because it's causing too many problems.
Well, I know y'all doing the best you can, and if you got vehicles that's causing problems, you don't want to have any more breakdowns than necessary. So something, I guess, need to do in the meantime.
Right.
I have a question and a comment. Question, the 4 purchases you're proposing in this particular item would be gas-powered?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And my comment is that if you stand behind one of these vehicles, you can smell the difference. I mean, you can smell the difference. It's not, you don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be a mechanic to understand that, this diesel is polluting the adjacent air worse than a comparable gas engine. And just set aside the question of broad, environmental issues. You don't want an ambulance vehicle aggravating breathing issues for the people being loaded in and out. I think that, you know, if we hit that technology point where the mid-sized diesels are actually as clean, wonderful. But in the meantime, we ought to be converting the fleet to the gas-powered chassis, just for the sake of the folks who are using the ambulances.
Yeah, and we're getting good mileage, like was talking about last time. We're getting good mileage out of the gasoline engines right now. They're lasting just as long as the diesels, with just a few little issues here and there, but nothing that really causes it to lose power or not be able to complete the transport to the hospital. That's something else you got to consider.
Mr. Bessie, wouldn't you think that if rocket can be sent to a moon and sent to millions of miles into the universe, that some of these engineers probably will be able to come up with diesel that won't cause as much fumes as you're speaking of?
I'd love to see it, and I'm a big fan of the space program, actually, but the truth is, those rockets are not that clean in terms of their emissions. They'll get it up there, which, you know, is what you have to do, but you know, the rocket science guys haven't fixed the problem yet. If the diesel science guys fix it, let's have them teaching the rocket science guys.
Steve, just to correct, because you said that the gas engines were lasting just as long as the diesels. You were talking about the new diesels, not the old good diesels.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the old diesels. I mean, not the old diesels, but the new ones with all the DEF fluids and all that.
Yeah. Thank you.
What's the availability of these for? Are they going to be delivered in 5 years or 5 months?
If we buy 4,
Yes.
they told me they could probably have them done by the end of the year, by December. It'd probably stagger out because the productions have started. So if we get this new one we're going to be asking for today, we could probably have it at the end of June.
We're going to have to bring it back to you because it's got to come, it'll be at a level, it's got to come back to you for approval. And so you'll see those as soon as we've got to use a purchase. There's actually one of them purchased, or a vehicle is purchased in here, but we've got to find you got to bid it. So we've got to get some competitive pricing.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank y'all. Appreciate that. All right. Item 8 is an amendment to fiscal year 2024 budget, an ordinance that appropriates home and community care block grant funds. And Liz White is going to come up and talk about the continued administration of in-home aid services.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a request for a budget amendment to the Home and Community Care Block Grant. This fiscal year, we budgeted, based on the estimate from last year, we actually received $60,444 more through the PTRC allocation. And this amendment would increase it to that level. While I was here, I also wanted to kind of give you an update on where we were since '22 when the commissioners allocated an additional $100,000 to this program. We have increased the amount of elderly and disabled in the community that we're serving to 135. At the time when we made the request, we were serving right at about 100. Some of this went to increase, and we also had an increase in price. Of course, everything's kind of been going up over the last couple of years. So the average back in '22 when we made the request was about $22 an hour that we were paying for the services. And this current fiscal year, we're paying about $29 per hour. So that's kind of the increase over the last 3 years. We still currently do have 581 aged and disabled in the community waiting for services through this program. So that's kind of the update on the program. Any questions about the program of the budget amendment?
Questions for Liz? Glad to get the extra money.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Agenda item 9 is an amendment to the fiscal year 24 budget. It appropriates funds from the National Association of County and City Health Officials. Aaron Sheldon and Mara Trimble. I saw Mara back there. Come on up, Mara.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, County Manager, and Assistant County Managers. The Health Department was awarded through the National Association of County and City Health Officials a scholarship for $2,500 to increase the knowledge base of our staff for infection control. And that was awarded to us, so it would be an amendment to the budget to accept the $2,500 for the educational needs of the agency. It will be for exam fees and study materials, and two of our nurses, one nurse and the doctor, are interested in becoming candidates to sit for their certification in infection control, which would be a broad-based across the agency, just to be subject matter experts on infection control in the agency. Any questions?
Questions for Mara, excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, Minor Barnett's going to come up and introduce item number 10. It's a grant. It's a resolution authorizing submission of an application to the United States Environmental Protection Agency to apply for and accept if awarded an air quality or an air monitoring and air quality sensors grant. Minor.
Good afternoon. During the last week of February, we received notification from the United States Environmental Protection Agency that under the Inflation Reduction Act, we were pre-approved to apply for up to $156,000 that would be distributed under EPA's authority under Section 103 of the Clean Air Act. And the reason we all like Section 103 so much is money distributed under that section of the Clean Air Act. That authority requires no local matching. So if we are approved, by the EPA, we're planning to purchase 10 new pieces of equipment, technical equipment, to deploy in our ambient air pollution monitoring network that we operate 365 days a year. And if we do that, our monitoring network will be in the best and most secure condition that it's been in a long, long time. I'd be glad to share any details that you might like to be interested in about the equipment and how we will deploy it. But this is a very exciting opportunity to receive up to $156,000 in federal funding to benefit our efforts with no local matching required.
Great news. You tell me it's the best we've ever been, I don't need to hear anymore. It's good.
Thank you.
All right, thanks,
Any
Minor.
other questions for Minor?
Very good. All right. Item 11 is an ARPA funding matter. It's a resolution approving execution of an agreement with Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. to create a co-located workforce training system with American Rescue Plan Act funds. Aisha.
Commissioners, I would like to take 2 seconds to introduce Bailey Arnold, the new American Rescue Plan Administrator. Bailey came from Behavioral Health, right? Public Health. Get that wrong every time. Public Health before transitioning to finance. Thank you, lady.
Hi, Commissioners. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
All right. So this agenda item is a request for an agreement to be approved with Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. for $800,000 to perform workforce training services through fiscal year 2026. It includes education sessions, trainings and materials, implementation of Forsyth Works marketing, uplift technology in the center to provide more training capabilities and increase connectivity, as well as the annual World of Work event, or WOW, in collaboration with Winston and Forsyth County Schools. Any questions?
Questions for Aisha?
I do have a couple of questions. Maybe I was in transition of becoming a new commissioner when there was the original agreement, but so it reads that it synchronizes education and training from partner entities. Who are the partners?
Great question. Hold on. Winston and Forsyth County School is definitely a partner. Forsyth Tech Community Center, Forsyth Tech. Let me see. I know those off the top of my head.
Yeah, I was going to see Andrea's sort of administers
Goodwill
that
as
part.
well, and the city of Winston-Salem.
And Forsyth Tech too, probably. Yes.
You want to add anything, Andrea?
So the partners are the county, Greater Winston-Salem, Goodwill, Forsyth Tech, and the school system. The city is not a partner.
Okay, Thank you. The next question I have is there a target population of who we're trying to introduce these workforce training services to? And if we do have a target, do we have data yet to show if we have been meeting a certain percentage of that target?
So that, for the intake and registration is something we're working towards and finding the most appropriate way to capture that data. The original application does align with certain zip codes and opportunity zones, and we're trying to find the most appropriate way to record that data. For example, when someone registers for a resume review workshop, we don't necessarily want to record their address, and just randomly asking their zip code feels a little inappropriate. So we've been mostly collecting how individuals hear about us. That's where Goodwill has been a great partner with their outreach, and Greater Winston is doing their own community outreach with groups like the Ministers Conference, Hispanic League, the Urban League. And so that method has been helpful, but developing more sustainable objective measures is definitely something we're working towards as we grow.
So my question is in regards to, I wouldn't be so much interested in, the demographics than the numbers. So it's, that a 2.5 million contract to help with workforce training, I think is very idealistic, and I hope that we can yield every piece of benefit from it. But I'm just trying to figure out, what's the target, and are we really, yielding a lot of benefit from the workforce training services? I think that, for instance, I get an email that I can sign up for some of the training sessions through the chamber, and so I have to sign up. So do they account for my signing up for that training, or?
Yes, the registration is included in it's part of how we measure who we're reaching. I will go back through the reports and the demographics of who our audience is and send that to you, as well as our plan for how to collect that going forward.
And so then lastly, I would assume that for the last bullet point as it relates to the workforce training services, consulting services to support these and related activities. So who would be the consultants? Are those the people we're partnering with, like Goodwill and et cetera?
So the partners are all involved at no cost. We're not compensating our partners. That, I believe, is actually an audit because this is such a large sum of federal money. To ensure compliance, Greater Winston is hiring their own auditor to do all the accounting for this, I believe. I know it's for an audit. I can double check on that exact.
Oh, yeah. So it would be good to, I think the citizens would definitely want to know that some of the dollars are going towards an outside auditing entity that has, it's indirect expense to make sure that we're receiving workforce training. And again, it would be helpful for me to advocate strongly for this incentive if I kind of have a more deliberate breakdown of what the dollars are going to as it relates to the workforce training, because I definitely try to share the information with my networks when Greater Winston-Salem get me the information, but I'm not as popular as most people think. So I have about 2 or 3, other networks that I send it out to, and I wish I could definitely make sure that more of our citizens have access to this workforce training, especially if it's conveniently done through the access of technology.
Absolutely. I will send you all of kind of summary of the reports we have so far, and there will be a press release tomorrow morning that I think you'll be very excited about regarding the website. Stay tuned.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to say I thank you for the World of Work event, which was wonderful and involves all of our Forsyth County students. And I think all of them were there that day, the high school. There was a large group there. So that is a great event, and I look forward to the next one. Thank you.
That's probably where half of this funds are going to get that organized and situated. But anyway, I would just like to see.
But a decent chunk, that
Yeah.
Coliseum's kind
Okay.
Money well spent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
We have a number of contractual matters. Item 12, Kyle Wolf's going to come up and review a resolution authorizing execution agreement between Forsyth County and Star Point Incorporated. Actually, that's probably not right. That's probably Liz. Yeah, come on up, Liz. It was.
Sorry, Dudley.
That's okay. I should have called it myself, actually.
Good afternoon. If you all that were on the Commissioners Board, in 2022, we started a project at DSS to get all of our paper records into Laserfish. At that point, we did do an RFP. It was estimated about 15 million images, about $750,000 over a 3-year period, which ends June of this year, 2024. We've completed all scanning of child support records, and the predominance of family and children's, our first floor file room is empty, and the majority of the ground floor is now empty, and we hit the 15 million images with those 2 programs. So we did, and worked with the county attorney, we did an informal bid, got 4 informal bids on the completion of the project, which is just under about 5 million more images, 225,000. StarPoint, who is the current vendor that we're using for the scanning, did come in almost 20 cents per image lower, and this is an all-inclusive charge. It's the pickup, it's the scanning, it's the delivery to MIS, and it's also holding our records for a year, and then the destruction, which has been authorized through the state to be able to do that. So, any questions about the project, the contract?
No, but thank you for working while you're retired.
She didn't finish the project, so she had to come back and help us. Her goal was to get all that crazy paper out of the warehouse and out of that.
Well, thank you, Gloria. I've always loved my job and what I do for the
Well, it
community, so.
shows.
Chantel knows
do
to
have-
call me if she needs me.
I do have one question.
Yes.
And it was just the materials we received, said the initial bid was based on something like 3,000, whatever, something per box, and that it turned out to be about 3,500 per box. And I did just a simple ratio to kind of get at the price issue. And if you can do, for 750,000, you can do the 3,000 per box. If you go to 3,500, it should only increase to 875, I mean, in that number. If you add the actual increased cost, it's, if I recall, it's about 970,000. So it doesn't sound like it's a deal in the extension on that. I mean, if we kept the same price as bid in 2022, we should be about 100 grand less than what the increased cost that you've got.
You are correct. The initial bid and the initial estimates were done by all of the people that came in. There was 4 vendors specifically of the 7 that we asked in the RFP that came to the building, looked at our records, estimated number of images per box, estimated how many boxes we had between all of our file rooms. And based on that, it seemed that the average was about 15 million. And we did that based on cost, based on the number of images. We've hit 15 million before we ever hit adult services or economic services. So that is due to, 1, the increase in the boxes, but it's also for the last 2 years, these programs that are not in Laserfish keep adding to it. They're adding more paper records. Adult services, that's your APS, your guardianship, your in-home services. They are not in Laserfish yet. They're not imaging until these records get in. So they just keep adding to the number of boxes that we have in there. StarPoint did have an increase from the initial in 22. It was 0.047 per image, and it's 0.049. And that's a very minimal, but when you start talking about millions of images, it does add up. So it's been really a combination of several things, Dr. Martin, is why we've come to where we're at 225,000 to finish this.
Yeah, that's just,
But what controls
I
is
don't
the image
understand.
cost.
I mean, I sort of understand that business, but it sounds like that's a,
But the image cost controls, the estimates across boxes and all that, at the end of the day, it's it's the image cost, right?
Right. And we are estimating 5 million. We went through with a couple of the vendors again, and that's how much we're looking at between what we have left for family and children's to finish it up, which is a very small amount. what we have for the adult division to get all of APS, guardianship, in-home services, the facilities that we oversee in the community, and then our program integrity, which is our fraud unit. Those cases are mandated to be kept forever. We cannot destroy those. And we're going by that, but it is done per image. So if we come in under, then, so it's an up to 225,000. It's not, the contract is 225,000 for that number of images. It is per image that we're charged.
I got it.
Okay.
I'm going to do a little more work on your.
Okay, if you have any other questions.
Just on your figures of now you got 5 million left instead of the 15.
Yeah. Yeah, we've done 15 million images. We have, right around. I can get the exact number, Dr. Martin, if you want. We've got it on all the invoices, and I can get you an exact number for next week if you'd like to have that.
I just did it, calculated. That's about right.
Okay.
I got it. I got you. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions?
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Item 13 is a resolution approving the purchase of computing endpoints for the Forsyth County Department of Social Services. Gary Kuntz with MIS will review.
Good afternoon. This is part of our annual PC replacement projects. So these funds are within our budget. We did seek pricing from various companies. The low bid was Dell Technologies, and the price is on the agenda item. The low bid is a state contract purchase. Again, these are within our budgeted funds for this year. So,
any questions for Gary?
Thank
you, Gary. Appreciate that. Item 14 is Kirby Robinson. It's a resolution awarding and authorizing a contract for the purchase of one Class 3 type ambulance to NWEV LLC. I'm sorry, Scott Angel. That's all right.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Board. In the ongoing efforts to source available ambulances, staff has located a unit through Northwestern Emergency Vehicles that can be built to the county's specifications. We've learned that this is an ambulance currently in the assembly process that another county actually ordered, but they ultimately backed out of pursuing that purchase. So Northwestern reached out to the fleet manager to make him aware that this unit is available for purchase. The unit is a Ford E450 Type 3 ambulance, which is the same as the units approved by the board in January of this year and in May of last year. The price of the unit is $268,607, which is based on the Houston Galveston Area Council, or HGAC, Cooperative Purchasing Program pricing from contract AM 10-23 for ambulances and EMS vehicles. The price includes the cost for graphics, a Stryker stretcher power load system, lighting, and HVAC options, and includes HGAC's $1,000 order processing fee. The price is consistent with the price for the units approved by the board in January of this year and in May of last year. The purchase of this ambulance will be one of the 4 new replacement units funded by the budget ordinance amendment briefed earlier, as the county manager mentioned. So this resolution awards a contract to NWEV LLC, who does business as Northwestern Emergency Vehicles, for the purchase of one Ford E450 Type 3 ambulance with options under the terms of HGAC contract AM 10-23 in the amount of $268,607. So the fleet manager's here, as well as emergency services staff. If you have any questions, we can answer for you.
I got to ask you sort of a dumb question here. We've had all this issue when we were discussing the other 4 earlier, the 4 authorizing. They were running in about the $280,000 a piece, and they were going to the Sheriff's Association. Now, if I'm hearing this correctly, this different manufacturer, I realize they had one in place, somebody backed out or whatever, it's available, and so it's $268,000. So can these guys make 3 more for $268,000, and it looks like we'd save $12,000 in an ambulance?
We are having that conversation right now with these folks, so hopefully we can be able to do that.
Something cheaper than the Sheriff's Association? I'm a little surprised at that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Look forward to hearing that.
All right, thanks, Scott. Item 15, Chief Hunley is going to review. It's a resolution approving the license of APCO in telecom software by the Forsyth County 911 Communications Division, Department of Emergency Services.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I figure it's only fitting that everything else has been about emergency services that I should come up and talk at some point for you today. This is a resolution for us to enter into. It's listed as a sole source contract for APCO and Telecom, which is a 3-year contract not to exceed $91,500. We currently use the APCO Premier software for our emergency medical dispatch and our emergency fire dispatch systems. That software is at end of life, and Telecom is the next software version that they use. It provides us, and the Premier software is no longer supported. It has been supported for a couple of years. So it'll be an upgrade to our emergency medical dispatch system and our fire dispatch system protocols, and it gives us more flexibility to make changes based on the response system dynamics that we have here in Forsyth County. It is a sole source for Telecom because Telecom is an APCO software, and APCO is the only one. APCO is the communications association that puts this thing out. So it's sole source for APCO, and APCO is the only one that sells this software. But it is the cheapest of the 3 vendors that we went out to find, and each vendor is a totally different software set. So the advantages of us sticking with APCO and our Telecom is that our 911 center is all certified in APCO. We are an APCO certified training center. We have APCO instructors that are certified through APCO, and if we move to one of the other systems, we would have to do an entirely retraining of the entire of the whole system. So the other piece is it interfaces easily with the next generation technologies that we're also looking to pursue, but with some other software things that I'll come and talk to you about at a later date. Of note, this is covered 100% by the 911 fund balance, and unofficially, I think we have about $1.5 million in that account. Been in any questions? That's all I have.
Good, thank you. Any other questions?
All right, thanks, Chief. Randy Hunsucker with the Sheriff's Office is going to brief 2 items, items 16 and 17. Item 16 is a resolution authorizing amendment to the agreement with FMRT Group for pre- and post-hire psychological medical services. And then item 17 is the Aramark Correctional Services item. So, Randy.
Thanks, Dudley. Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair. From July to October of 2023, the detention center had over 110 vacancies, as you might remember. But since we increased the pay and added and extended the $5,000 signing bonus, switched the thick shifts, many other changes, the staffing situation has changed dramatically. Applications and hiring have increased significantly, and as of this past Monday, we were in fact down to 62 vacancies. As a result of this hiring surge, we have quickly overrun the $95,000 do not exceed contract amount for FMRT approved by the board last May. FMRT, as you know, does all the pre-hire medical and psychological testing. Therefore, the item before you today authorizes increasing the do not exceed amount to $150,000. And we have identified $55,000 in our operating budget to cover the amendment, and we're requesting no additional funds today. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Randy? I've got one short one. When you made the budget out to start with, you weren't very optimistic about your hiring success.
Yes, it's a lot of moving parts on that one. Yep.
Okay, just wanted to make that point.
Go ahead with item 17, Aramark.
So on May 4th of last year, the board also awarded a 3-year contract to Aramark in the amount of $5.6 million for 3 years. That included a not to exceed amount of $1.7 million for the current fiscal year. For budgeting purposes, this amount assumed a ADP of 755. However, the ADP has increased rapidly in the recent months. In fact, it was 788 on Monday. So we project that we could exceed the do not exceed amount, and well, we're recommending this resolution to increase it to another $125,100 just to make sure we're on the safe side and don't have to come back again. We have identified funds in the existing operating budget to cover this amendment, and no additional funds are being requested. And I just wanted to mention, if we don't use all that money, it just rolls right back into your general fund balance. So it's just enough to be safe in case ADP surges again in the summer.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand how the ADP, is it on any given day? Well, I mean, I'm trying to get it, is this a daily kind of participation? Or if it's an average,
Right.
is that, if that's on a 12-month period, just going up to 788, and I mean, there's obviously variation in your population. I'm just kind of curious over what period of time is this average daily participation calculated on?
Yeah, that's a great question. We budgeted 755 is what we kind of agreed to during the budget process. And that is, really the ADP is a proxy, you're right, because that doesn't mean that's how many meals you sell every day. So there's 3 meals per day. The ADP, the population there increases quite a decent amount on the weekends. If you have weekenders, some people they get arrested, they're there brief time, get bonded out. So you can actually have quite a larger number of meals, and it appears on the surface. But as your ADP is increasing, that's telling you that you could be, there's some days we're selling over 800 meals for some of the 3 meals per day. So it adds up quickly, but you're right, that's exactly right. But there's a lot
Why
of,
isn't that bid just on a per meal basis?
It is bid on.
it is. So the prices are not changing. So you're basically it's the number of meals you sell times the meal price. That's what's driving it up is the number of meals being sold, not the price. Right.
And the other part that was in the materials, the advanced materials, that I have a little trouble understanding was this issue of trays.
Right.
That are piling up. I mean, that was, I believe, the word, piling up in cells, and as a result, they're not back and washed. You're using styrofoam, and the bid requires styrofoam that we buy that extra piece.
That's correct.
Help me understand this. I mean,
We do the contractor does have to cover all styrofoam costs. If there's like segregated inmates, so make sure that that's set aside. They have to cover 100% of that. However, what we had seen during the vacancy situation, that the inmates were hoarding these trays by the dozens in some cases, using them as to sit on. And we've tried to crack down, or just the novelty of having them. There's not really good reason for it, but we have been doing, since December, have tried to crack down on that hoarding. So if there's not, all this hoarding is going on, there's no food trays, and so the contractor's having to use more styrofoam trays. So that has happened, and it has increased the cost. It's not the biggest part of it, but it is noticeable if it continues, but
it's understandable. It's the staff effort to get the tray back in the kitchen.
Yeah.
doesn't that create bugs and things and food particles and like unsanitary conditions? Seems to me that if you don't return your tray, you don't get another one with food on it. I mean, I'm having a little trouble with this.
Well, you don't, the tray's brought to you.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So it gets returned. There must be a mechanism to return them, and then you return it, and then you get your new one. Am I missing that? What am I missing?
There's 3 meals a day.
Yes.
So it's the labor to get the meal to the, do you pick up the tray at lunch for the one that was for breakfast? It's a function of how much work there is to do, and the fact that the staffing has been incredibly short. So ideally, every tray would be delivered and you'd get your new tray, that you would actually, the tray would come. You only use one tray if you're able to take the tray in the morning, come back after they finish and get the tray and take it back. If you can't get that till lunch, then there's 2 trays. And you're giving them a tray, right? Because you're giving them
you give them a new one and you take the old one.
Which means you have to have, if you could get the tray every time, you would only need 1/3 the trays you need that if you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's getting better. It's
getting better.
improving.
It's just a staffing function.
Started the first half of the year was rough, so it's getting better.
Yeah. And those problems will start resolve as all problems will start resolving as we can get staffing squared away. So, thanks.
Any other questions for Randy?
All right, just a couple more items. We'll get on through this. Item 18 is a resolution authorizing execution of an agreement between Forsyth County and Elite Aluminum Corporation for the purchase of a Forts fold-out rigid tactical shelter. It has Adam Pendlebury, but it actually has some emergency.
Adam's gonna kick us off.
Adam's going to kick it off. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As a part of the 2020 Paycheck Protection Program Act, the Forsyth County Department of Public Health received $2.6 million through Agreement 543 with NCDHHS. These funds can and have been used for a broad range of COVID mitigation activities, including building response infrastructure. In collaboration with Forsyth EMS and City County Emergency Management, the Department of Public Health identified the Fold-Out Rigid Tactical Shelter, or FORTS, as a purchase. This would be a sole source purchase. The cost of the unit is $205,600 and would be fully reimbursable through NCDHHS. I'm going to pass it off to Chief Huntley and August Vernon to discuss the specifics of the asset.
Do we have one of these already of some sort?
We do not have one yet. No, this would be the first one.
So we've operated all this time without having such a thing. And now we have a need for such a thing. Help me understand that. August, go right ahead.
Question again?
I said we have not had one of these before for X whatever until now, and now I'm just trying to understand why we think we need one now in comparison to why we've not needed one to this point.
Okay.
Am I missing something here?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I think one of the ways I would respond to that is we're always trying to look at how we can expand our resources and capabilities to respond to disasters and crises. We have used other types of resources similar to this in the past, including tents, mobile command posts. We typically have to go to other counties to request those for mutual aid. We've actually had this same item in the county used for events such as the fair, and we have to request those from the state some considerable amount of time beforehand. So this is just another tool in our toolbox that I think is an excellent resource.
Yeah, I think I'd think of this, August over the time has brought us items that we would not normally go out and purchase, particularly through the hospital system. Like we've got a shower system it's at the hospital system. We've got a water treatment system that's there that were all purchased by grant funds. This is really a similar thing. It's going to be an asset that we have. It'll be a regional asset, and so it's just really an opportunity to provide that kind of asset that's out there. And it's not, we've done that in a couple different places through different grants through state emergency management. We're part of that team.
And I don't know if it'd be beneficial for me to show a picture instead of just a description of what we're talking about.
Please do.
Oh, okay. So obviously this photo was not taken in Forsyth County. Basically what this is a portable kit, and one of the reasons we like this, any vehicle that has tow capability, which we have plenty of vehicles with all our public safety agencies, can come and respond and take this box or fort anywhere it needs to go. And I'll very quickly show you a couple pictures here. There's a couple ways to lay them out. They have air conditioning, they have heating in them, they're wired. It basically folds up and can be loaded with any truck basically that can tow it. And it's basically this little box that can be set up pretty quickly. You can use a generator. It can be plugged into an existing power source. You can add on pods to them. So that's a picture of a system with solar power, which we're obviously not asking for. Again, these are just some configurations. These are pretty much in more and more widespread use around the United States. These are just a couple examples. You can make them ADA compliant. The picture on the right is showing you what the trailer looks like. Another reason we like it, it's not going to just sit out in the sun outside. You can cover it with, from all the weather with a tarp or gear like that. You can do a lot of different things to the inside of it.
We can dump it out in the middle of a field somewhere or in the middle of downtown for a planned event, or if we need it for an immediate event, you can respond out. And these are just some examples of some different uses for it. These are some pictures I got from I believe one of the NASCAR races in North Carolina. You're seeing them at a lot more planned events. One of the reasons we approach public health is this, the priority with the funding is it could be used for mass testing, mass vaccination, public health events, preparedness events. And then the second role would obviously be to use at special planned events or if we have an emergency response. And these are just some pictures I had gotten from North Carolina that you can configure them a lot of different ways.
Yeah, the nice thing about this is that when you set it up, it's a 20 by 20 cube, right? And so we, at the fair, we actually set one of these up that we got from the state, and we set up in it 3 separate rooms, if you would, inside the box to deal with 3 separate patients. And at one point, we had all 3 beds with 3 patients in them, right? And so, or it can be an office, or it can be, so we can configure this thing once we get it set up, which takes, 20 or 30 minutes tops. We can configure it any way we need to configure it based on whatever event we're going to do. So there's a lot of versatility. It's not like the We Care van or truck that's, it is the way it is. So if it doesn't support your need, you don't use it. We can make this single thing support the need based on what event it's going to support. So there's a lot of flexibility there for us.
Other questions?
Is this the only company that you've looked at, that you've gotten a bid
No,
from?
this is the only company that has developed this type of module right now. We've got trailers, we've got RVs, and we've got tents, but this is the only one like this right now.
Well, I could be wrong, but I think there's other companies that could do the same thing, but that's okay. I'll talk to you about it.
Other questions? We're good.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
All right, agenda item 19 is a resolution awarding and authorizing a contract for the purchase of bipolar ionization equipment for various county facilities. Mike Shore, our facilities director, will come up and talk about this. This was an ARPA-funded item, so.
Thank you, Dudley. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The item before you selects and awards a purchase contract to Sustainability Management Partners, LLC. The ion equipment that is to be purchased is to improve indoor air quality for DSS, Public Health, LEDC, and the Government Center. The need for the equipment was brought on by the COVID pandemic. After some research, it was decided to bid ion equipment. It was determined that ion equipment would be the best fit from an effectiveness, cost, and maintenance perspective. An RFP was created for the ion equipment, and it was advertised earlier this year through City and County Purchasing. Sustainability Management Partners was the low bid with a not to exceed cost of $195,577.20. The resolution will also authorize the county manager to approve change orders up to $15,000. And the purchase of this equipment will, like Dudley mentioned, will be coming from ARPA funding. Take any questions.
Any questions, Ryan?
I think this is the same that the school system used, isn't it? Or,
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
and they're happy with it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And I was pleased that the low bid was less than the budget. We haven't had too many things less than the budget.
Unusual
So
these days.
It's kind of nice to have that. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mark Davidson is going to come up and review item 20. It is a resolution authorizing execution of a second consolidated and restated lease agreement between Forsyth County and Signature Flight Operations, LLC for full service, fixed-based operations. Mark.
See it?
And I will say
No.
Jim Hopkins with Signature Flight, who is a resident of Forsyth County, is also in the audience.
No, but it is.
Thought I had it. Sorry.
I think it's this.
That's good. Okay. Well, thank you for having me. Mark Davidson, Airport Director. I just got a few slides for you. Our existing lease with Signature was executed a couple years ago, January 1st, 2021.
A lot of changes has happened since we executed that agreement. If you drive out by the airport, you see that we demolished several buildings for all the improvements we're making. That old Kwanzaa hut went down. We built the new corporate hangars, Corporate Hangar 1 and Corporate Hangar 2, and several of you came out for the ribbon cutting. We also improved some ramp out in front of those two hangars. You saw in that video that we had earlier about our legislative efforts, the terminal renovations are happening. It's looking like this time next year we'll be ready, January, February. But the biggest change that's happened is we had an FAA inspection this past summer, and there's some impacts that we've had to the airport. What they discovered and wrote us up for was that there's what we call, and I apologize if I throw any acronyms out, is our runway object-free area actually has some objects in it. This fuel farm, it's an underground fuel farm, has been there since 1976, and now it's a problem. You can see that that red rectangle is our runway safety area. It extends 1,000 feet from the end of the concrete or that end of asphalt out, and then on each side you have 250 feet from the center line of the runway. Then you have another runway object-free area, and that goes from 400 feet from the center of the runway out, 1,000 feet beyond. So you're not supposed to have any parked aircraft or vehicles or any fixed items in that runway object-free area, the ROFA. And so the FAA, we want to keep our certificate with them. We're a 139 airport. That means we can handle charters. And in addition to the type of runway we have, we need to abide by this rule. So we've come up with a plan, and I'm going to go through a couple of these things. One of the things is I had to do was write a letter to Signature Flight Support, our tenant, that they can't park any vehicles or aircraft in that runway object-free area. Also agreed with the FAA that we would move, we have what's called a taxi lane through the middle of the ramp. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but right now there's a taxi lane that goes through the middle of the ramp and then over here, so you could access our tenants on the other side of the street there, like Lookup Flight Academy, things like that. So we have this taxi lane that goes through the middle, so we're going to move it to the northern side of the ramp edge. You can have a taxi lane going through the ROFA, but you can't have just aircraft parked there. So we're going to do that. Another recommended solution is relocating the fuel farm, the underground fuel farm, the 1976 fuel farm, out of the ROFA. This is where we ran into some issues. We need Signature's help, and so we approached Signature Flight Support, and they are willing to pay for a new fuel farm, and I'll get into that for in a second. That's one of the reasons we're doing a new agreement with them. And then also, in our airport certification manual, we had to document this plan, what we're going to do. So, I know we just did the recent agreement with them, but here's some of the proposed terms of the second reinstated consolidated lease, and I want to thank Gordon's group and especially Fred Johnson for helping me on the lease agreement. But Signature is willing, based on budget, a minimum of $5 million they're willing to invest in a new fuel farms. And the savings, if it's less than the $5 million, they have to invest the remaining amount into the other leasehold county-owned improvements. Signature and the county would extend the existing lease agreement so they can amortize that investment, that $5 million investment. We're also willing to give them a $120,000 rental credit for Signature to remove the fuel farm and install monitoring wells, and the liability would still stay with Signature. Fuel farm maintenance would be still Signature's liability, and improvements would revert to the county at the end of the term. Right now, the term is to 2040, so we're talking about a 10-year extension to 2050. Some other improvements or other proposed terms in the agreement is that we're going to reduce their leasehold because of that restriction from the FAA. We can't lease them that space in that runway object-free area. We're also looking at reducing the rent for fuel farm tanks that are removed, those underground tanks, as well as the avgas tank. We want them to consolidate the avgas tank and move it to wherever the new fuel farm is going to be. New land rental, if it's outside of their leasehold, we're going to get the current rate for land is going to be applied to their lease. They're also willing to partner with us on the terminal building that's under construction. They're going to contribute $550,000 towards the improvement. And what that's going to do is it's going to go into our operating budget so we can pay that limited obligation bonds, the debt service we have at the airport. Also, new revenue from the leasehold. They're going to lease 2,854 feet. We've been always talking about them coming over, and that'll be the front door of our community, the terminal, after the renovations are done. So that's another $57,000 in annual rent for the new space in the terminal. And to give you an idea, with this agreement, they pay about with the new agreement, they'll pay $1.4 million in rent to the county. And then we add this additional $57,000 once they move in the terminal building. And also, what's good about the agreement is we currently have an annual CPI adjustment every year, but every 5 years, we can choose to have an appraisal done and make sure that the rent stays at fair market value for the whole term. So before I get into questions, Jim Hopkins here with me. He's a Senior Vice President with Senior Flight Support. He just wanted to give a little bit of support to this agreement we executing with the county.
Mr. Chairman, Commission members, thank you. We were all surprised by this. In 2002, when Jim Taylor was our president, the FAA came in. We used to park airplanes at the end of the runway. We used to have a taxiway at the end of the runway. And the FAA came and said, remove this. Everything else is fine. The clear zone is fine. We're good. And now it seems they've changed their mind. It's all in the need for safety. We all appreciate that, and it's hard to argue with that. The reality is, though, the fuel farm has to be moved. So we remain and consider ourselves a partner of Forsyth County. This is something that we're going to have to do and adjust. I today remain shocked by the increase in cost of construction, and this fuel farm cost is amazing at $5 million, but we've tested it. We've looked at several suppliers, and this is the best deal that we can come forward with. We greatly appreciate this opportunity to continue to work with you. Also, I wanted to mention, many of you came to the grand opening of the hangars. At that, I promised that we were going to do something for the community. Mark and I have worked. There is a group called Experience Aviation, in which we'll be inviting Forsyth County students out to the airport to show them the airport and hopefully give them incentive and show them that there are jobs at the airport for them, and hopefully they'll consider that. I do not mean to cloud one issue with the other, but I made you that promise the last time at the grand opening. I wanted to let you know we are following through with that. We hope to do that either this spring or next fall when they're back in session.
Ready for questions?
Any questions?
A couple. One is that on the FAA side, are there opportunities to appeal an FFA report in terms of requirements? I mean, I'm sort of hearing things were okay 3 or 4 years ago, now they're not okay. And sometimes, different inspectors have different opinions and X, Y, Z. I mean, is there something right? I'm trying to get at the ability to appeal this kind of letter that ends up costing this much money on something that was okay a short time ago.
That was my first reaction. So the people that inspect the airport are out of Atlanta. The 139 that I talked about, FAR, Federal Aviation Regulation, Part 139, the certification of our airport, is a different department than the airport's district office in Memphis. So I talked to Tommy Dupree. He was the same mind, like this shouldn't be a problem. He took it to the top. I mean, he's over the whole region as well, and they were not going to move on it. So the next thing was, this is a mandate from you, unfunded. I asked for funding for this. I mean, you went and you just changed your design standards, and now you're asking us to move this fuel farm. And so they said there's no funding available. So we started looking at county resources, and then we talked to Signature, and so we've gone down several. This is since June. This is not last week kind of thing. This has been going on. And so I'm trying to look at it as an opportunity. It is a 1976 fuel farm. It's underground. This will be an above-ground fuel farm. It'll last, I think, your commitment or Signature's commitment, he can talk about that, to the airport. We're talking for years out. This will handle our fuel services for years out. We also have all those other things that we need to have done in the lease agreement. So they're invested in the terminal, so they wanted a lease extension there. So I think it's a combination that it's a good deal for the county for years to come. What I'm always worried about now is we've taken on this debt service, and we have $1.2 million that we had to pay in debt service that we never had to before. Locking in agreements like this that pay, as well as groups like North State Aviation are going to set us up for success.
And maybe another, I guess another just general question is that, I have heard this in the past. This came up when we had a lot of discussion about the property tax rate being so much higher here than it is obviously at Piedmont Triad, just from taxation and parking planes. And I've also heard, and I do not know this because I don't know, but in the same discussion of that, comparing parking at Piedmont Triad and parking here, is that the gas cost was more, fuel cost was more. So is this fuel farm going to also translate into additional fuel cost at all?
No, sir. Well, first of all, we have two types of avgas fuel in Winston-Salem. One is self-serve, one is full service. Full service is more expensive, but we keep the self-serve fuel pricing in line with all the surrounding airports. That is our promise to the airport. We continue to do that today. Of all of our, the percentage of the persons paying retail fuel prices in Winston-Salem are 7%. Everyone else receives discount pricing. In addition, they receive network pricing across the network, wherever they fly in the Signature network, of discounts that they receive the same price at those airports they fly to as they do here. And so we monitor the fuel pricing. We monitor it across the state, our 5 locations there, and across the ones across the nation. Always glad, though, if there is a question from either a customer, an operator, the county, or the airport, to address those concerns. And we do that when questioned. And we always come out with satisfactory answers. It doesn't help us to run customers away.
No, I understand that.
Yes, sir. I wanted to mention one thing.
And certainly no intent, I was not being insulting, I just didn't
No,
know,
sir.
and I have heard that before, and quite frankly, obviously, I didn't ask any more questions about it, because we were kind of into a contract with you, so.
Yes, Dr. Martin, first of all, questions like that are always welcome. They need to be asked. You need to make sure that people are being treated fairly and watched, and we would invite those questions anytime. The other thing that's important is, when this fuel farm issue was raised, you asked, what else did we do? We reached out to Senator Budd's office to ask him if, can he intervene? Can he ask any questions? And so he assured us he would be in touch, or his office. We spoke to his local representative. They're going to be in touch. They're going to run this to ground for us. But, that's nice. But on the other side, preserving the Part 139 regulatory ability is important for Forsyth. It's important for all the businesses there. And so we're prepared to proceed like this if needed.
What is the deadline for getting this work done for this? You get this letter, fix all this kind of stuff. Does it have to be fixed by when?
That it was a part of when we all got on a conference call. The states involved too, the North Carolina Department of Transportation, the FAA Administrative District Office, Aviation District Office, the group down in Atlanta. We all got on a call and we said, okay, to move forward, to keep our certificate, we'll take a number of steps. One of them was to remove the fuel farm, paint lines on the ramp, keep aircraft and vehicles out of the runway object-free area. So it was like they approved the steps that we're taking. They did not put a deadline on how long it is to get the fuel farm out. They know that we're working on it. I said I'm working on a deal with Signature. I didn't say it was passed by the county commissioners, but that's the path we need to do, either the county or get Signature involved.
I hear you.
I don't want to ask for a deadline, tell you.
So if you waited 10 years to do it, you figure you'd hear from them in 10 years?
I did I'm not agreeing to that.
I'm just saying.
Move on.
All righty. Well, I may want to have a little offline conversation. I'll be quiet now. Any other questions? Thank you. And thanks, Jim, thanks for being here. Sorry you had to wait through a fairly long agenda.
Not at all. I appreciate what you all do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 21 is a resolution awarding a contract to Barr Construction Company for the 4001 North Liberty Street EDA grant project. We have James Anderson here to brief this item.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This item is to award a contract to Barr Construction for the 4001 North Liberty Street EDA grant project. The scope includes replacing the waterproofing system and topping slab on the east elevated parking area, parapet repairs, replacement of a section of deteriorated curtain wall glazing, and wet sealing the remaining curtain wall glazing. This project was formally bid by City County Purchasing, with 2 bids being received. Bar Construction submitted a base bid of $7,733,000, and Hayco Construction submitted a base bid of $7,800,000. Approximately $5.5 million had been budgeted for the construction portion of the project. Due to the bids being over budget, General Services staff, airport staff, and Ursula Breakup Yard architects engaged with Bar Construction to develop value engineering options to bring the project within budget. At the conclusion of VE, the cost was reduced to $5,533,000, with the slight overage coming from funds set aside for project contingency. Bar Construction has committed to a 4.4% MWE participation on the project. Since this did not meet the 10% goal, a good faith effort review was completed on March 1st, 2024, and determined that Bar had made a good faith effort to meet this 10% goal. And the resolution also establishes a $400,000 contingency for change orders. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Real quick question. In just reading the materials, that $400,000 contingency, part of the way it read, it sounds like that Bar agreed to the particular price, knowing he's going to get some of that back from the contingency.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I do expect that as we open up that slab, that we may find deterioration that, was unable to be documented during the design process.
I certainly agree with having more, but it may have been the way it was written, but I couldn't help but be led to believe that. I mean, I think having a larger contingency is good on something that is clearly you're going to be discovered. You do not know what you're going to discover.
For certain.
You do that work.
And I also say too, in defense of Bar, they were unaware of what our contingency budget was outside of the bid. The only thing that they were aware of was our construction budget.
That tells me a lot. That's good. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Sorry. Any other questions for James?
All right, thank you, James. James, I'm going to try to get us in closed session by 4:30 because I know we're pushed up for time. Board, members, would it be satisfactory if James talked about this access? It's really an access to Caladium. He can talk about it next Thursday. We'll just brief that formally then. Yeah. And also the personal property, we can brief that formally next Thursday as well. The rest of it, you've got these items for the appointments, and you see those in front of you. And with that, and then a few reports. Anyway, that would let y'all get into closed session by 4:30, and then what we'll do is we'll do the personnel item first, and then the economic development matter after that. It's a real quick economic development matter, because I know, Mr. Chairman, you're under a pretty tight time frame. Satisfactory? All right. Need to ask the board to consider a motion to go into closed session to discuss 2 matters. 1 matter relating to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the area served by the public body, including agreement on a tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered by the public body in negotiation pursuant to provision of General Statute 143, 3181104. And 1 matter to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, or conditions of initial employment of an individual public officer or employee or prospective pursuant to provision of General Statute 143, 3181186, and other business to come before the board. At this meeting, following the closed session, the meeting will be adjourned and will be in the large conference room.
Second.
All right.